you know, it was a funny time for Beck because he was trying to sort of find that because when he was solo and did his own sort of like his own shows with, you know, that were just so fucking out there, that were just that mix of like folk music and punk rock and like with like his grandfather's weird like Fluxus shit in there. It was just amazing.
I would play in bands locally, and I would see him, you know, he would do the guerrilla style acoustic sets where he'd like play an acoustic set in between bands, and then, you know, he had cassette tapes that were circulating around that were great, and just home recordings.
You know, because Beck was, you know, had really only done small clubs and had been doing them for years, you know. I mean, it was sort of one of those, you know, the overnight success that took like 10 years to make kind of thing.
Beck cooks up this idea to go downtown and buy from a Mexican mart, buy this big boombox, and with a built-in light show, and you hit a button and like a disco ball would come up out of the top of it, and then the lights would shine on it, and it would create its own disco ball moment. And then he's got a handheld mic and he's going to rap to it, and it starts feeding back, and Al's bar barely has a PA anyway, and it has no bottom end, so you're just barely hearing this little tiny track in the back, a giant boom box, lights going off, and Beck rapping to it. And, you know, and the head of like 4 record label presidents, at least seriously 30, 40 executives, record label executives and managers in the room. And, you know, just these looks, people going in circles looking at each other like, what? A spectacular moment.
When it came time to actually play on the tour, it was really difficult for him. There was, you know, because he'd never really had to focus. He'd always, I mean, his shows that he would do in LA were these amazing but spontaneous things. I think they were kind of almost based on, you know, mood or what the audience was doing. It was really kind of performance oriented.
Joey was great. I mean, Joey and I became like quick friends. We were roommates on tour, and playing with him was great. I'd never played with a drummer since then or after then, or that it's been as good as Joey. He made me a much better bass player.
We started rehearsing at Holly Gully rehearsal studios, kind of old LA punk rock rehearsal studio, and 2 weeks later climbed in the van. So that's that.
Our first tour was in a van, and it was insane. It's ridiculous. What? Well, as I recall, he had done a West Coast tour by himself when the record was coming out, and that's where he met Chris Ballou, and that's where Chris Ballou joined the band. You know, we all clicked. I gotta say, like, you know, we all got along. And those guys learned how to play as a band over time. I mean, there's no question that those early shows were just like all over the place. And, you know, not just from the band's point of view, like from the crew point of view, like we had like half a crew member and me.
Somebody had the idea to have him play in like the smallest, kind of most offbeat venues possible. So, you know, we would do this weird little kind of coffee shop tour.
We never played like the obvious place, but we wouldn't even play like the obvious like punk rock club either. We would, so like instead of playing like Stashes or whatever the like punk rock joint in Columbus was, we ended up playing this like it was literally a deli, like a basement in a deli. It was like where like they found these places, how they found them, I have no idea. It's just a shit kicking street, taking trucks, driving neighbors downstairs.
We were trying to learn, God, like so many songs. He was trying to figure out like how to present, you know, these like acoustic folk songs mixed in with you know, rock and country and hip hop and blues, and it was so difficult to focus, you know, on all that stuff.
At the time, it was overwhelming because I think it was for all of us. Outside of Joey, I don't think any of us had played to an audience that was that accepting and that, you know, just wanting to rock out, or the size of the audiences.
It got to a point where Beck felt terrible because there were so many people outside that couldn't get in. And there's a certain point where it's like cool to have a couple of people who can't get in, but then it's like at a point where it's really annoying that you're like playing deliberately small clubs and no one can like see you. And so Beck would do this thing where he would play an early show and a late show, and it was insane. I mean, I have no idea how he did it. I mean, he got sick, he got pneumonia like halfway through the tour.